Gemini Destiny Call Awakening. Why your current career no longer fits your soul. Gemini, if you are listening to this at this point in your life, it is not accidental. There is a quiet but persistent sensation following you lately, a feeling that your work no longer meets you where you are becoming. On the surface, nothing may be wrong. You might still be competent, respected, even successful by conventional standards. Yet beneath that stability, something feels slightly off, like wearing a suit that once fit perfectly but now restricts your breathing. This is not restlessness. This is not boredom. This is the beginning of what ancient traditions would call a destiny call. The destiny call does not arrive as a loud command. It does not demand that you quit your job tomorrow or burn down the life you've built. For Gemini, it arrives as a subtle dissonance between who you are inwardly evolving into and the role you are still performing outwardly. You wake up knowing how to do what is required of you, yet something inside resists fully showing up. Tasks feel heavier than they used to. Conversations repeat themselves without nourishing you. Even success feels strangely hollow, as if it belongs to a former version of you. This is where many Gemini misinterpret the signal. You may think you are simply understimulated, that you need more variety, a new project, or a different environment. But the universe is not asking you for more stimulation, it is asking you for alignment. The destiny call appears precisely when your intellect can no longer compensate for a misaligned soul. You can still perform well, but you no longer feel met by what you do. And that mismatch is not a flaw, it is a signal. Gate 1 is about understanding how the universe redirects Gemini specifically. Unlike other signs, Gemini is not pushed through crisis first. You are redirected through meaning erosion. The work still functions, but the meaning leaks out slowly. What once excited you now feels repetitive. What once challenged you now feels mechanical. This is intentional. Gemini evolves through awareness, not collapse. The universe withdraws emotional energy from your current path, so you can hear something deeper calling. You may notice that distractions no longer satisfy you the way they once did. New ideas come, but they don't stick. You research alternative paths, but nothing immediately clicks. This liminal state is uncomfortable for Gemini because you are used to movement creating clarity. Now, movement only creates more noise. This is the universe asking you to pause, not to stagnate, but to listen. Destiny cannot be heard at the same speed as curiosity. At Gate 1, the core signal is this: your career has stopped growing you, even if it is still growing results. That distinction matters more than you realize. A destiny-aligned path does not always begin with higher income, status, or visibility. It begins with expansion of inner coherence. You feel more yourself doing it, even if the outer structure is still forming. Right now, your soul has outgrown the container that once held it. For Gemini, this is particularly destabilizing because your identity has often been tied to competence, intelligence, and adaptability. You learned early that being mentally agile kept you safe and valued. Your career may have been built on this gift, your ability to learn quickly, communicate clearly, and move between roles with ease. And for a long time, that was enough. But destiny does not erase your gifts. It deepens them. It asks you to stop using them to fit into systems that no longer reflect your inner truth. The universe redirects Gemini through repetition with diminishing returns. You keep encountering the same professional themes, the same frustrations, the same conversations just dressed differently. This repetition is not stagnation, it is emphasis. The signal gets louder only when it is ignored. And what it is emphasizing is not what you are bad at, but what you are no longer meant to do exclusively. Gate 1 asks you to release the belief that destiny must look dramatic. For Gemini, destiny often looks like dissatisfaction without obvious cause, a sense that you are early for something you can't yet name. You may feel ahead of your environment, yet uncertain about where to go next. This is not confusion, it is transition. The mind wants a plan, but the soul wants permission. Notice what drains you now, not what stresses you, but what subtly depletes you. Stress can be meaningful. Depletion is diagnostic. The tasks that leave you empty are pointing to where your energy no longer belongs. The conversations that feel repetitive are showing you where your voice has outgrown the audience. These are not signs of failure, they are signs of evolution. The destiny call does not demand immediate action, it demands honesty. An honest acknowledgement that you are no longer who you were when you chose this path. That you are carrying a more refined sense of purpose than before. That something in you wants to contribute differently, more meaningfully, more consciously. This is the moment before reorientation, not the moment of decision. Gate 1 closes with awareness, not answers. If you feel a quiet recognition stirring as you listen, that is enough. You are not behind, you are not lost. You are standing at the exact point where the universe stops pushing and starts inviting. In the next part, you will face the deeper resistance, not external obstacles, but the inner fear of outgrowing an identity that once kept you safe. Gemini, Gate 2, is where the destiny call becomes uncomfortable not because it threatens your future, but because it questions your past. This gate does not confront you with external risks first. It confronts you with an internal loss. The slow realization that the identity you worked hard to build no longer contains who you are becoming. And for you, this is the most delicate threshold of all. Your shadow here is not fear of failure. It is fear of outgrowing success. The role you inhabit may have once validated your intelligence, adaptability, and relevance. It gave you a language to explain yourself to the world. It gave others a way to recognize you. Over time, that recognition became safety. And now, the destiny call asks a quiet but radical question. Who are you if this label no longer defines you? Gemini thrives on mental movement and relational feedback. You often discover yourself through dialogue, through roles that allow you to exchange ideas, solve problems, and stay mentally alive. When a career has served that function, leaving or transforming it can feel like silencing a familiar voice. The shadow whispers, "If I change, will I lose the part of me that knows how to belong?" This fear rarely announces itself loudly. It hides behind practicality, timing, and logic. You may find yourself saying, "This isn't the right moment," or "I need more clarity first," or "I should be grateful for what I have." These are not lies. They are partial truths used to delay a deeper reckoning. The shadow does not want to destroy your life. It wants to preserve continuity. It wants to ensure that nothing essential is lost. But destiny is not asking you to lose yourself. It is asking you to stop shrinking yourself to fit an outdated frame. At Gate 2, the universe holds up a mirror through emotional resistance. You may notice a subtle dread when imagining a different path, not because it feels wrong, but because it feels unknown. Gemini is comfortable with unknown ideas, but not with unknown identities. You can explore concepts endlessly, yet hesitate when exploration turns inward and asks you to release a version of yourself that others recognize. There is also grief here. Grief for the time invested. For the version of you who believed this path would be enough. For the sacrifices you made that now feel misaligned. Gemini tends to intellectualize grief quickly, reframing it into lessons or insights. But Gate 2 asks you to let the grief be felt, not solved. Unfelt grief becomes resistance, felt grief becomes passage. Another layer of the shadow is loyalty. You may feel loyal to people, systems, or expectations that benefited from your old role. You might worry that changing direction will disappoint others or destabilize relationships built around who you were. Gemini often carries the role of connector, translator, or mediator. When you shift, the network shifts. The shadow fears being the cause of disruption. But here is the truth the mirror reveals. Staying where you no longer belong creates a deeper disruption, one that happens quietly, inside you. Over time, this internal dissonance turns into cynicism, restlessness, or emotional numbness. You keep functioning, but you are no longer participating. Destiny does not punish this state, it simply refuses to energize it. You may notice that your curiosity begins to turn inward during this phase. Instead of asking, "What else could I do?" you begin asking, "What actually matters to me now?" This question is unsettling because it has no immediate answer. It cannot be researched or optimized. It must be lived into. The shadow resists this because it prefers maps over mysteries. Gate 2 also exposes a fear of commitment not to a job, but to a direction of meaning. Gemini likes to keep doors open because it preserves possibility. But destiny requires devotion, not flexibility. Not devotion to a fixed outcome, but devotion to a deeper truth. The shadow fears that choosing a calling will collapse your multiplicity. In reality, it will concentrate it. The universe intensifies this mirror by creating emotional friction where you once felt ease. Praise feels hollow. Achievements feel performative. You may even feel disconnected from compliments that once fueled you. This is not ingratitude, it is misalignment. Your soul no longer responds to rewards designed for a previous stage of growth. Gate 2 is not asking you to reject your past. It is asking you to stop mistaking familiarity for destiny. Your old identity was real. It was necessary. It carried you this far. But it is not meant to carry you forward unchanged. The fear you feel is not a warning to stop. It is a sign that you are standing at the edge of an expansion your ego cannot fully predict. Sit with this mirror, Gemini. Notice where you defend your current path most strongly. Notice where logic rises quickly to protect comfort. These are not flaws. They are signals pointing to where growth is imminent. You are not being asked to leap blindly. You are being asked to loosen your grip on who you think you must remain. In the next part, Gate 3, the tone will shift. The focus will move from fear to transformation. How the destiny call reshapes your career into a form of contribution, and how Gemini's true role emerges not as a job title, but as a function your soul is ready to embody. Gemini, Gate 3, is where the language shifts. Up until now, the destiny call may have felt like loss, discomfort, or uncertainty. Here, it begins to reveal its purpose, not as a new job title or a sudden breakthrough, but as a reorientation of how your energy wants to move through the world. It is about what you are finally ready to offer. A career is something you do. A calling is something you transmit. This distinction is essential for you to understand. Gemini has often thrived in roles that require adaptation, multitasking, and intellectual agility. You have learned to succeed by responding to external needs quickly and effectively. But a calling does not respond to demand. It responds to meaning. It arises when your inner coherence becomes more important than external validation. The alchemy begins when you stop asking, "What should I do next?" and start asking, "What wants to move through me now?" This is not mystical abstraction. It is a practical shift in orientation. You begin to notice that certain conversations energize you more deeply than others. Certain topics feel alive in your body, not just interesting in your mind. Certain forms of expression, speaking, writing, teaching, guiding, no longer feel like skills, but like necessities. For Gemini, the calling almost always involves being a bridge, a translator between complexity and clarity, between confusion and understanding, between people and ideas that would otherwise never meet. But the difference now is depth. In the past, you may have skimmed across many surfaces. The calling asks you to dive into one current long enough to carry others across. This is where fear begins to loosen its grip. You realize that destiny is not narrowing you, it is focusing you. All the threads of your past experiences, even those that seem disconnected or unfinished, begin to reorganize themselves around a central function. Nothing was wasted. Everything was preparation. Your adaptability, curiosity, and mental range were training you to hold complexity without losing clarity. Gate 3 reveals that your mission is not about abandoning intelligence for spirituality, or practicality for purpose. It is about integrating them. You are not meant to retreat from the world to find your calling. You are meant to engage it differently, with more presence, with more intention, with less fragmentation. You may feel drawn toward roles that involve guiding others through transition mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. This does not necessarily mean becoming a teacher, coach, or healer in a formal sense, though it can. It means that your presence itself becomes catalytic. People leave conversations with you seeing more clearly. Not because you tell them what to do, but because you help them articulate what they already sense. The alchemy of calling also transforms your relationship with time. Urgency dissolves. You no longer feel the need to chase every opportunity. You become selective, not out of fear, but out of resonance. When something aligns with your calling, it feels inevitable rather than exciting, calm rather than dramatic. This is how destiny feels when it is authentic. Another key shift at Gate 3 is ownership. You stop offering fragments of yourself in exchange for approval and start offering integrated value. This may require restructuring how you work, communicate, or present yourself. You might realize that certain environments no longer support the depth you now require. This is not rejection, it is refinement. You also begin to sense that contribution does not require perfection. It requires honesty. The calling does not ask you to arrive fully formed. It asks you to arrive fully present. Your uncertainty becomes part of your authority, not its absence. Gemini's greatest contribution comes not from having all the answers, but from asking the right questions at the right moment. Gate 3 does not end with clarity. It ends with direction. A felt sense of this way. Even if the path ahead is not fully visible, you begin to trust that coherence will guide your choices more reliably than analysis alone. This trust is not blind faith. It is earned through listening to what consistently energizes rather than drains you. As you stand in this gate, you may notice a quiet confidence replacing the old restlessness. Not the confidence of certainty, but the confidence of alignment. You no longer need to prove your worth through adaptability. Your worth is expressed through presence. In the final part, Gate 4, we will ground this calling into lived reality. You will learn how to answer the destiny call without burning everything down, how to build bridges between who you have been and who you are becoming, one intentional step at a time. Gemini, Gate 4, is where destiny stops being an idea and starts becoming a lived practice. This is the gate that many people misunderstand, because they believe answering a calling requires a dramatic rupture, a resignation letter, a radical reinvention, a leap into uncertainty. But your path does not unfold through destruction. It unfolds through integration. The universe is not asking you to abandon your life. It is asking you to realign how you inhabit it. The destiny call becomes real not when you escape your current circumstances, but when you begin to show up differently within them. Practical presence means allowing your inner shift to guide your outer choices gradually, intelligently, and with respect for timing. This is especially important for Gemini, whose mind can rush ahead of the nervous system. The calling is not urgent, it is persistent. And persistence requires sustainability. You may feel pressure to figure it all out before taking action. But destiny does not respond to clarity first, it responds to honesty. The most practical step you can take right now is to notice where your energy naturally wants to flow when it is not constrained by expectation. Pay attention to the moments in your day when you feel more awake, more grounded, more like yourself. These moments are not random. They are clues. Gate 4 invites you to experiment without self-betrayal. This means creating small containers where your calling can express itself without demanding total commitment. You might begin by giving more space to the kind of conversations that feel meaningful to you. You might write, speak, teach, or guide informally, without monetizing or professionalizing it immediately. These are not distractions from your career. They are bridges toward it. One of the most important practices at this gate is finishing. Gemini often lives in initiation, energy starting ideas, opening conversations, exploring possibilities. But destiny requires completion. Not perfection, but follow-through. Each time you bring something to completion, even something small, you strengthen your trust in yourself. And trust is the foundation that allows larger transitions to occur without collapse. Practical presence also means respecting your current responsibilities, while loosening your emotional dependence on them. You can do your job well, without letting it define your worth. You can participate fully, without pretending it is the final destination. This distinction is subtle but powerful. When you stop asking your current role to fulfill your soul, it releases its grip on you. And when that grip loosens, movement becomes possible. Another key aspect of Gate 4 is pacing. Gemini often wants reassurance that a new direction will work before committing energy to it. But destiny does not offer guarantees. It offers alignment. Instead of asking, will this succeed? Ask, does this expand or contract me? Expansion may feel calm, not euphoric. It may feel grounding rather than exciting. Learn to trust that sensation. You may also need to renegotiate boundaries internally and externally. This includes boundaries around time, attention, and emotional labor. As your calling clarifies, you will naturally become more selective. This is not withdrawal. It is prioritization. Saying no becomes easier when yes is connected to something meaningful. Each boundary you set is not a limitation, but a signal of coherence. Gate 4 also asks you to tolerate uncertainty without self-judgment. There will be periods where you are between identities, not fully who you were, not yet who you are becoming. This in-between state can feel uncomfortable for Gemini, who prefers movement or articulation. But this is fertile ground. Identity is reorganizing itself. Do not rush to label yourself too quickly. Let the shape emerge through experience. You may notice subtle shifts in how others respond to you. Some people may sense the change and feel drawn to it. Others may resist it because it disrupts familiar dynamics. Neither response is a verdict. Destiny often reorganizes relationships as part of its unfolding. Stay present without over-explaining. Those who are meant to walk with you will adjust. Those who are not will naturally drift. Practical presence also involves grounding the calling in the body. This may sound abstract, but it is essential. Pay attention to how your body responds to different tasks, conversations, and environments. The body registers alignment before the mind understands it. Fatigue, tension, and restlessness are signals. So are calm, steadiness, and quiet focus. Let these sensations inform your choices. Gate 4 does not promise comfort, it promises congruence. You may still feel fear, doubt, or impatience. But these emotions no longer control your direction. They become companions, not drivers. You learn to move with them, rather than against them. This is maturity of calling, not certainty, but capacity. As you practice living this way, something changes. The idea of changing careers fades into the background. What takes its place is a deeper sense of orientation. You are no longer searching for the right path. You are cultivating the right relationship with your own becoming. From that relationship, choices emerge organically. Gate 4 is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning of embodiment. In the final part, we will step back and look at the threshold you are standing on, not to close the story, but to leave you with a question that continues to guide you beyond words. Gemini, this is not the moment where answers arrive neatly arranged. Destiny rarely works that way. What you are standing in now is not a conclusion, but a threshold, a place where the old language no longer fully explains your life, and the new language has not yet taken form. This in-between space can feel disorienting, especially for a mind that thrives on articulation and clarity. Yet it is precisely here that the most honest transformations begin. The destiny call does not demand certainty from you. It does not ask you to predict the future or commit to a title, a role, or a timeline. What it asks is quieter and more demanding at the same time. Are you willing to stop pretending that what once fit still does? This willingness is not dramatic. It often appears as a subtle refusal to numb yourself through distraction, to over-intellectualize discomfort, or to rush into the next structure simply to feel secure again. You may notice that your tolerance for misalignment has diminished. Situations you once endured now feel unbearable, not because they are worse, but because you are more awake. This is not impatience, it is integrity. When your inner truth sharpens, compromise becomes heavier. And the universe respects this shift by offering you fewer illusions and more invitations. At this threshold, it is important to understand that destiny is not a single decision. It is a relationship you enter into with yourself. Some days you will feel clear. Other days you will doubt everything. Neither state is a verdict. The calling is not measured by how confident you feel, but by how consistently you return to what feels alive, rather than what feels safe. You may be tempted to ask, what if I'm wrong? This question comes from a mind trained to optimize outcomes. Destiny does not operate on right or wrong. It operates on resonance. A path can be temporary and still be true. A choice can evolve and still be aligned. What matters is not permanence, but presence. Are you present in what you are doing, or are you merely performing it? The universe communicates with Gemini through subtle recalibrations. It will not force you to leap. It will simply withdraw energy from what no longer reflects you and quietly amplify what does. Pay attention to where effort increases without satisfaction. Pay attention to where ease increases without explanation. These are not coincidences, they are signals. As you move forward, resist the urge to narrate your transformation too early. Let it mature in silence. Gemini often seeks understanding through dialogue, but some phases require incubation. Meaning needs time to condense. Allow yourself to live the questions before turning them into answers. This patience is not stagnation, it is trust. You are not being asked to abandon logic, planning, or responsibility. You are being asked to let them serve something deeper than security. When logic supports alignment rather than suppressing it, it becomes wisdom. When planning responds to inner truth rather than external expectation, it becomes guidance. The destiny call will continue to speak to you through persistence rather than urgency. If you ignore it, it will return not louder, but clearer. Each time, it will strip away another layer of distraction until only the essential remains. This is not pressure. It is precision. Before you leave this message, sit with one question. Not to answer it immediately, but to let it work in you over the coming days. If no one needed anything from me, and nothing needed to be proven, how would I choose to contribute my mind, my voice, and my presence to the world? Do not rush this question. Let it follow you quietly. If this message resonated, do not feel obligated to respond outwardly. The most honest response is attention. But if you feel called, share in the comments not what you plan to do, but what no longer feels true. Naming what has ended creates space for what is arriving. Destiny does not require belief. It requires listening. And you, Gemini, are already listening whether you realize it or not.